This isn't really a story about a bank robbery. It's about how a bank was robbed of its integrity from the inside out, and not with guns, but with spreadsheets. So today, we're going to do a strategic, forensic deep dive into how one of America's biggest banks didn't just stumble into a crisis, it actually engineered one, metric by painful metric.
So let's start with a really simple question for you. How many bank accounts do you have? 1? Maybe 2? 3? Well, for a time, if you were a Wells Fargo customer, the answer could have been 8. And here's the scary part. You might not have known about most of them.
You see, inside Wells Fargo, there was a sacred number, 8. And I want to be crystal clear, this wasn't a suggestion. It wasn't some aspirational goal. It was a corporate mandate, a hard target that would end up defining the entire organization.
And that's the thing you have to understand to get what happened here. Wells Fargo didn't get into trouble because it hired thousands of criminals. It got into trouble because it built a system where good people felt they had to break the rules just to survive. This is a story about the devastating power of a single corporate goal.
So here's our game plan for this deep dive. We'll start with the 8 is great empire, and then see how those targets became threats. We're going to investigate how the metric was literally manufactured, explore the anatomy of corporate denial, and then finally uncover the real design flaw at the heart of this entire crisis.
All right, Section 1, the 8 is great empire. To really understand how this all went so catastrophically wrong, you first have to appreciate why on paper this strategy was seen as absolutely brilliant.
The whole strategy was called cross-selling, and the idea itself was actually pretty elegant, right? If a customer already trusts you with their checking account, well, why not sell them a savings account or a credit card? What about a mortgage? It was seen as the master key to boosting revenue and building real customer loyalty.
And from the boardroom's point of view, the logic was just a clean, simple loop. You take an existing customer, you deepen the relationship by selling them more stuff, and the result? More profit, more loyalty. I mean, executives loved it, investors loved it, and Wall Street rewarded them for it, big time.
And this elegant strategy was eventually boiled down into a simple, catchy, rhyming slogan, 8 is great. 8 products for every customer. That one little phrase turned a business strategy into a non-negotiable command that echoed from the C-suite all the way down to every single teller in every branch.
So now we move from the clean, pristine logic of the boardroom to the high-pressure reality of the branch floor. And this is where the story takes a really sharp, dark turn.
And here it is, the critical disconnect. What was framed up in an earnings call as an ambitious stretch goal was actually experienced by employees as a daily punishable quota. The exact same concept was weaponized as it traveled down the corporate ladder.
And the punishment? It was very, very real. We're talking about employees, many making just barely above minimum wage, facing public shaming in meetings, formal warnings, and just constant threats of being fired if they missed their daily numbers. Their entire job security depended on hitting that one target.
So just pause for a second and think about the system they designed. When failure is punished that severely, but actual success is mathematically unrealistic for most people, what kind of behavior are you actually training? It's not excellence, it's desperation.
And this brings us to the logical and frankly tragic outcome, manufacturing the metric. Faced with this impossible choice between their ethics and their paycheck, employees didn't innovate, they adapted. They just learned how to survive the system.
And these were their survival tactics. Things like creating fake email addresses to enroll customers in online services they never asked for, opening accounts without consent, applying for credit cards in a customer's name. These weren't the actions of master criminals. They were the desperate moves of people trying to meet impossible demands just to keep their jobs.
The scale of this was just staggering. We are not talking about a few isolated incidents. The final estimate was over 3.5 million unauthorized accounts. This wasn't an anomaly. For a while there, it was the accepted workflow. So, of course, when the scandal finally broke, what was the official explanation? Oh, these were just a few bad apples. But let's be real. 3.5 million fake accounts isn't a few bad apples. That's an entire orchard designed for rot. The data just completely dismantled that corporate story.
So, the big question is, how could this happen on such a massive scale? Well, that leads us right to the anatomy of denial. Now we're going to shift our focus upward to investigate how leadership managed to see the successful metric while actively ignoring the fraudulent method being used to get it.
This timeline proves the problem wasn't a secret. Not at all. It was known for years. You can see it right here.
Internal audits flagged it as early as 2010. Thousands of employees complained. But instead of fixing the problem, the company fired the whistleblowers, all while the CEO was publicly praising the very numbers that were being faked.
The message that was sent down the chain of command, whether it was spoken out loud or not, was absolutely unmistakable. The system taught everyone a crucial lesson. The problem wasn't the fraud, the problem was getting caught.
And this brings us to the core lesson of this entire case study, the real design flaw. When you look at all this with a forensic lens, you realize pretty quickly that this was never really a fraud problem. At its heart, it was a measurement problem.
So let me define that for you. A measurement problem is what happens when the metric you're tracking, in this case the number of accounts, actually incentivizes behavior that destroys the real goal of your business, which should have been customer trust and long-term relationships.
And here it is, the crucial design flaw. The moment a target goes from being an aspiration to being a command, the system itself warps. It stops being a tool to measure genuine performance, and it becomes a machine for manufacturing the appearance of performance, no matter the cost.
You know, at the end of the day, it comes down to one of the most brutal truths in all of management. You don't get the behavior you expect. You get the behavior you reward. Wells Fargo built a system to reward a number, and a number is exactly what they got, at the cost of everything else.
And this is the real warning for any leader watching this today. Wells Fargo protected its cross-sell metric because it was tied to its identity, but that protection hollowed out the entire company from the inside. So the final question I'll leave you with is this: what part of your business are you protecting that might actually be killing your future?